Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
In Texas, they have a saying, if you don't give your sobriety date, it's possibly because you don't have one. So, according to, because of God's grace and my desire to be sober and the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous and my willingness to work those 12 steps, and the fellowship that I have found here, I've been sober 31 years and about 7 months, and I'm impressed. 31 days was a record for me. I mean, it was more than a record. I was in St. John's, Psycho, several times that long, and I stayed sober. Other hospitals I didn't. I want to tell you why I'm impressed. I'm impressed for what God has done for me that I could not do for myself. I'm impressed what a simple set of principles that incorporate everything I need to know to stay sober has done for me when I was willing to allow those steps to work me until I was able to work them. I'm impressed that you're here. I'm impressed that AA has been, I think we're 49 years old just a few days ago. I'm impressed that so many of you get up so early on Sunday morning. If I were not here, I'd be asleep. I'm night people. I'm night people. That came from my drinking. I was so hungover and that I had to stay in bed until I was able to move. I started drinking when I was 16, but that was just puppy love, trying to impress my peers. Well, actually, they were older than I. I skipped some grades in school, and when I was 16, most of the people that graduated from high school were 18 and 19. We had to spend the night party of all the girls that graduated, and then there were boys, of course. We didn't. It wasn't coeducational. Back in 1929, we didn't have coeducational spend the night parties, you know. We were allowed to go out with the boys because most of us had a brother or two that came to the party. Some boys told me there was they had some wine, but they told all of us. They had it hid out in the woods. And we went out in the woods, and it was under a log, as I remember it. Because I remember when I got there, and I had a little wine at home, so I didn't think anything about it. And they poured about that much in a peanut butter glass, and I said, please fill mine, I'm accustomed to it. Started lying then at 16, you know. And then I drank several of them, and I liked it. I liked the taste. I liked the way it felt when it went down the gullet, that warm, good feeling. And I liked everything about it. I went from happy to crying. You know, maudlin. Maudlin's the word. I took everybody's in, but, I forgot to tell you it wasn't wine. It was 150 proof of rum that they had brought in from Cuba. And these boys, you know, these boys were college boys, and I certainly wanted them to think that I was worldly. And so that night when we got back to the house, the girls had to slip me in, and as I was sick all night long, going first from crying to laughing, they had to try to keep the family, our host and hostess, from knowing that I was drunk. Nobody else got drunk. And I took every one of the girls' inventory that was there. And it was very helpful to me when I took the 4th step. Everything I called them, I became. And the next day, my mother asked me what we did at the spend the night party. And I said, I laughed and shrugged my shoulders. And I said, I don't know what the rest of them did, Mama. I got drunk. And Mama laughed. But she said, Evelyn, you mustn't say Evelyn's my real name. But I didn't like Evelyn. She was a drunk. And she said, you mustn't say that. People are going to believe you sometime. And see, I learned at the age of 16 that I could tell the truth and laugh or wink or shrug my shoulders and people wouldn't believe me. And that is a devious form of lying. I have had a lot of trouble in not exaggerating and lying since I've been sober. I have had to say from the podium, let me back up. That isn't the way it happened at all. And it embarrasses me to have to do it. But see, I have to ever be conscious that a lie would be it's getting better after 31 years. It's getting better, but I have to ever be conscious that, see, the important thing, it isn't really important whether I lie to you or not. The important thing is I don't lie to me. I've had a lot of trouble with self-honesty. Oh, but let me finish my drinking career. It won't take long. It just went 23 years. At the age of 19, I really became interested in drinking. And I met a man, and he was the only man I had ever wanted to marry. I was engaged at the time, because in the South, if you're not engaged before then, they think there's something wrong with you. And I was engaged and wearing his diamond, but I knew I wasn't going to marry him when I took the ring. But I thought that Mother would feel better about me if I was engaged. And then I met this man, the only man I'd ever wanted to be married to in my life, the only man I had ever loved, like I heard girls say they loved every man they went out with. You know, and I just didn't love every man I went out with. I enjoyed them. I thought they were good sports and felt like a sister to them. They didn't turn me on. And then I met an older man. I met a man who had traveled extensively and who was manager of a gold mine. I have been called a gold digger. And I fell in love with him, and we went around with a very cosmopolitan, older group of people, and I learned to drink like grown-ups. At first, I started with, besides that rum, I started really with White Lightning. That's corn liquor. We called it Joe Louis back in Alabama, because every time you took a drink, it would knock you out, you know. And then my alcoholism started. I had to learn to drink that. It made me sick at my stomach, but I learned that you could regurgitate it and start all over. And then the time came when it no longer made me sick at my stomach, and that I could drink quite a little bit. And I lived in mining camps, and I drank with men, and I played poker with the men, and I went to sports events with the men, and I was proud of the fact that I could take drink for drink with them. And the time came, by the time I was 28 years of age in 1941, so you don't have to add things up. I'm 71 this past April, and I've been preserved pretty well in alcohol, so I get around right good. And I get around better than some of the 17-year-olds I know. And I still keep late hours. I like the nighttime. I'm night people, as I said. I love the sounds at night. I love the bright lights. I just love living, period. And I have seen the sunrise, you know, if I've been up all night. But anyhow, what happened was that I read the Jack Alexander's article in 1941, I believe it was. I was 28, and I found out that I was an alcoholic. I just thought I drank too much. But I identified. I tore the magazine up and burned it so my husband wouldn't identify me. My husband was a heavy drinker, but not an alcoholic. And when he drank, he became when he had too much, he became Lord Chesterfield. It just made me sick. I wore my hair long and everything, and braided usually in a halo type thing across my head. And by the end of the evening, if I got drunk, the hair was hanging down. I always started, even when I was hung over, looking good, because if I couldn't dress myself, I got the maid to do it. And if I couldn't put my makeup on, we lived in hotels a lot, I'd call the beauty parlor and ask them to send somebody up to make me up. And I'd go looking like a lady, and I'd come home looking like a tramp. You know, the slip would be showing, the hair would be down, the lipstick would all be off. And I'd look in the mirror and, oh my God, I hated me. I just hated me, but I didn't hate me enough to quit drinking. And then I went from that into acute alcoholism, and I nearly died. I took antabuse 5 times, different times, drank on top of it 5 times. They told me it would make me so sick that I couldn't drink, and they're lies. I went in a coma once, but I just thought that was an exceptional bad hangover for 5 days, because I don't remember any of it. And on my own accord, I took antabuse again. And the last time that I drank on top of it was after my husband's funeral. After his funeral in 1951 in December. And after the funeral, I drank on top of antabuse, and I never took antabuse anymore. I didn't like me when I was drinking. I had been raised to be a lady, and we hear this often. I was raised in a good Christian home. Had a lot of trauma with the church, because I heard it wasn't the church per se, and it wasn't the doctrine. The problem I had was a revival minister that preached hellfire damnation. I wanted me to sign a pledge that I wouldn't drink, I wouldn't smoke, I wouldn't dance with a man that I wasn't married to, and something else, wouldn't play cards. Well, I'd been playing cards since I was 4 or 5, and I knew how to play poker by 6. And because I had 4 brothers, and we had a lot of card games in our house, and we played for matches or pennies or whatever. And I wouldn't sign this pledge that he wanted me to sign, that I would never do any of these things. And I explained to him that God, I didn't think we'd put it in writing to God, and that I didn't plan to quit any of them anyhow. And I was just trying to learn to inhale at the time. You know, I wish I had signed it and kept it. Not anything but the smoking, because I'm addicted to smoking now, and I don't even want to quit. A doctor told me I should the other day, and I said, I'm 71 years old, and I've been smoking since I was 16. And he said, well, if I was 71, I don't know whether I'd quit or not. I need to quit. But you see, I needed to be sober many years before I got sober. But I couldn't get sober until I wanted it more than anything else in the world. I did crazy things, like almost married a man whose name I couldn't remember. I never have remembered it. I had horrible blackouts. I tried at all times to dress like a sophisticated lady. And now I wear dungarees if I want to. I like to dress. I like clothes. I like to be an attraction in AA. When I go to speak, I might have on slacks today, you know, if I wasn't over here speaking. But the way the speaker looks has something to do for me with what the message is. If they don't smile, I don't want what they have. You know, if it doesn't come out just normally that way. I want to be happy. See, I wouldn't ever stayed in this program if I couldn't have been happy, joyous, and free in it. I wouldn't have stayed here, because I could be miserable drunk. I don't mean that I haven't had any bad days. Of course I've had some bad days. I'll tell you one more thing about my drinking. Possibly the worst faux pas that I ever made, and I made plenty, was when I called the chairman of the board of this big mining company that my husband was managing. I called the chairman of the board in front of the directors. A son of a bitch. I had ever used that word since I was 4, and I didn't know what it meant. My brother said I reneged at old maid, and I didn't know what reneged meant, and I thought it was cussing men. I'd heard the men driving the cattle call the cattle, "You son of a bitch, get back in line," you know, or something. And I told some silly little joke about the devaluation of the American dollar, and that man said to me at this lovely party out at the club, a private club in North Carolina, he said to me, "Evelyn, I didn't know you had communistic ideas." You don't say that to a drunken rebel. I stood up so my voice would carry. And I pointed my finger at him and called him a son of a bitch. And then I told him my family was making this a safe democracy when his family was trying to get steerage together. And you see, the bad part of it was true. And my husband said later that I called him everything but a Christian and a sharecropper. We never had a mixed party in that company until my husband died, because they couldn't offend him by not including his wife. And my husband wouldn't have kept that job, except he was one of the finest in the business. I did everything I had to do to feel like I was a tramp. I came here feeling that I was a moral leper. And when I told you I like to be try to be an attraction when I speak, I still felt like a moral leper after I got sober, because I sobered up in a group where there were very few women, and not women who had come from the same walk of life that I came from. And this lovely lady came in from Texas and spoke in our group, and she wore a hat, and she was dressed in good, understated taste, and she stood up and intimated that she'd done everything that I talk about having done now, but in those days, intimation was daring for a woman of her background. And I was home free. I was home free. The boys had already told me in the group I was like the ladies they drank with. But see, I couldn't identify with the few girls who were transit girls that were there. I couldn't, except one who had a good program, and she was cross-eyed. She had never drunk anywhere but in a neighborhood bar, and I'd never been in a neighborhood bar in my life, because I like the better places. I like the supper clubs. I like the fine hotels, the country clubs, the yacht clubs, and you name the private clubs. And we drank a lot in each other's homes when I was in the South too. And I thought I was different, and I thought I was better. I had trouble with self-honesty, and if any of you are having any trouble with that, I'll tell you what happened to me. Then I got rid of it. When I got sober, and I got sober in a little place that was over an over an empty store, and it was back of a AA club. Now, I had been in hospitals all over the country with private nurses. We were paying 7 doctors at one time to find out what was wrong with me. I knew, but I hoped they never found out. I went in hospitals under false diagnosis, except at St. John's. The doctor knew what was wrong. My brother told him. And besides, he smelled it. And I had been traveling all summer after my husband died. I thought if I was leave California or Nevada, where I was leaving then, it would go to the East Coast, where my friends didn't drink so much, things would be different. And of course, you know that the geographics didn't get me anywhere except in more trouble. I had blackouts, and I was in the Waldorf Astoria, and this is 1952, remember, and owed them over $1,000, and I don't even remember being there. I've never had any recall. I was staying at the PA and checked in, to my knowledge, at the Roosevelt, all at the same time. When I wasn't in hospitals that the doctors would send me to. I went to marry a man and found out we didn't have anything in common but baseball. And I knew the season was too short. And then I met another man and almost married him, and he's the one I kept. I was sitting across the table from him, and he looked at his watch and said, "We better hurry." And I said, "What's our hurry?" And he said, "We don't want to miss our plane, and I don't know where we're going." And he said to me, I just stalled him for time, said, "Couldn't we take another?" And he said, "No, it would make us late in Miami to make our wedding plans. I mean, to get our license." And I said, "Of course, we can't afford to be late. What I'll do, I'll go to the bathroom, come back and finish my champagne, and then I'll go to take a cab and go back to the hotel and pack, because I have much more packing than you to do. And you can finish breakfast or lunch or whatever we're having." I don't know what the time of the day was, but I'm sure it wasn't early. And I wouldn't have been up. And I found out it was a back entrance, and I hailed a cab and said, "Take me as far on this island as you can without going in the ocean." And I never saw the man since. Things have been tough for me financially in AA, and I've looked for him. Like in prisons and AA and internationals and institutions where I speak. I was telling you about self-honesty. I'm in this place. Now, I've been accustomed to having private nurses around the clock, and in the better hospitals with chief of staff, certainly one of my doctors. I saw to it that I met them socially every town we moved in when my husband was doing consulting work, so it would be easy for me to call an ambulance and tell them to meet me there. You know, but that's when you thought you were going to die from pneumonia after coming off of a drug. I was a daily drinker and a periodic drug. I was going to tell you about this. Why don't you ask me the questions about it? About self-honesty and how I got that. About how I quit lying. Well, I'll tell you how I quit lying. I found out that you can tell people I prefer not to discuss it. If I'm not willing to tell you the truth, if you ask me something, I just say I prefer not to discuss it. You know, you can't take that a sentence further. Just no way. That is vital. And I still do it, because if it's none of your business, I don't tell you. You know. Well, as far as sharing my story, I don't care what I tell you. If there's a girl that wants to know what I did about certain things, I share what I've done. I've shared it with a lot of you, not in this room, but with a lot of men too, because I find that men have done some of the same things I have done. And I don't find it hard to talk to an alcoholic, because if I haven't done it, I've either thought of it or I didn't know it existed. I didn't want to, because I'd already found something I liked better, you know. And I remain true to the alcohol, though when you got a love affair, you don't cheat. I didn't take the pill, so I don't know anything about pills except what I see every day over at North Hollywood and see the damage that it's done. In this little hospital, my husband's dead. My family have been to Al-Anon, and they taught them to, it was called Family Group then, to release with love. And that meant not giving me any more money. And my estate was all tied up. I'm in the hospital. I've just had breast surgery, and they rallied around again then with love and money and doctors and nurses. And you know, I knew the night before God wasn't going to let me die of a respectable disease. He was going to make me live in something. That's what happened. It wasn't malignant. And my brother came over and released me with love and told me he had gone as far as talk. This is in Sedalia, Missouri. They have brought me back to be near two brothers. they found me in New York and brought me back. And I had the doctor and nurse put me on the plane and so forth and so on. And they told me that they didn't want me in their homes anymore because they didn't want their children to see their aunt in the condition that I was in. That the children seemed to know I was sick and not bad, but they didn't want them to ever find out differently. And he told me he had been to talk to the chief of police in Sedalia. My brothers were well known in business. It's not a big town, 26,000 people. But they were in the community working socially. And he told the cops, the chief of police, to tell all of his cops not to take me home like they normally did, just take me to jail like they did common drunks, and not to go and get my whiskey when I was too drunk to do it, and not to pay for it when I was too drunk to write a check. And he told me if I got in jail, which I was going to, not to waste my nickel calling him, because he wasn't going to bail me out, that I was an adult and I had the right to do what I cared to do. And if I wanted to live, which meant not drinking, they would go to any lengths to help me. And if I wanted to die, I'd have to die by myself because they weren't going to be responsible for it. Tough love, and that's the finest love in the world. I got sober in a place like I'd never even been in my life. It was upstairs over an empty store in Independence, Missouri, back of a little club room. And they had rooms and a dormitory for men up there to sober them up. But they wouldn't take me in the hospital in Sedalia. And the planes weren't flying, they said, not sometime in that area. And they couldn't get me out far enough away that I could get into a hospital. And I was nearly dead. I had done nothing but drink for a week. And they counted the bottles, and it was 2/5 a day average, and no signs of my having eaten any food. And I went insane. The doctor said that it was malnutrition, too much toxic poisoning, drinking too much too fast, and not eating. But see, I know it was from a soul sickness. I didn't like me. And I had lost all conscious contact with God. And if any of you have had any problems there, I'll tell you how I regained a conscious contact with God. And in this place, there were just men. And they didn't take women, but it was nowhere else for me to go. And a man and woman and 2 women took me there. And they said that the patrolman stopped them and told them that it was not safe to travel on the roads that day. And they'd have to travel at their own risk. And they told them that it was urgent that we got to Independence and they would try it. I hallucinated all the way with them giving me alcohol. I smelled magnolias when they weren't in bloom, of course, in midwinter with the snow on the ground. But I kept talking about the magnolias and how sweet they smelled. And I had happy hallucinations except when I heard my mother's voice, because I now know that was my conscience. You know, the things that I was taught right from wrong as a child. I knew right ever since I can remember. And Walt, a man who had, Dr. Nason in Kansas City had found in a jail, trying to beat his brains out. And Dr. Nason and some men from AA took him to Dr. Nason's basement, and the men from AA took care of him, and the doctor took care of him. Dr. Nason was to have treated over 5,000 people before he died, as well as his regular practice. I mean, I'm talking about alcoholics when I said people. Excuse me, there are others in life. And besides his regular practice at the hospital, he could have taken me there, but I would have had to have been put in restraints. And he said I was a fighter, and that my heart was not going to last if there was any stress, any undue stress on it. But he told Walt, this man that kind of, well, he was head of this little place without a salary. You understand the kind of place I'm talking about? And well, there were no rugs on the floor, no drapes at the windows, and I don't think Salvation Army would pick up the furniture that was in the place now. But it looked good to me because people like you were there to help me. But the girls couldn't manage me. And everybody was afraid of me. The doctor wouldn't come in the room until Walt told me about the doctor saving his life. He had to tell me every time because I couldn't retain anything. And that he loved me like Walt did. Walt stayed with me and asked me if I could believe that he loved me like a sister. And I said, yes, I understand what you're saying. I have 4 brothers. And he said, I'll stay with you, Alabam. I'll stay with you. And we're going to make it through. We're going to make it through. The doctor didn't think we were going to make it through the doctor said the prognosis was death by insanity, a death by heart attack, a total insanity and a wet brain. And thank God for the Waltz in AA. Thank God for the doctors that are in AA. Thank God for all of the people here and the Al-Anons too, because they were very helpful to me. At the end of the 5th day, Walt told me that the prognosis was not good. This man stayed with me 5 days and nights. 5 days and nights, because there was nobody else that could handle me. The people that brought him clean sheets and so forth to the room backed out, and it wasn't out of respect. And Walt told me at the end of the 5th day that the prognosis wasn't good, or near the end of the day. And he told me that the doctor said he had done everything that medical science knew to do for me. And Walt said, I've done everything I know to do for you. And he said, Alabama's just one thing left. And I said, what is it, Walt? And he said, you know, I've been praying for you many, many times aloud every day. And the prayer, he said, could you ask God, could you pray and ask God to restore you to sanity and to remove the obsession for you to drink on a lifetime basis, a day at a time? And I said, Walt, I would if I could, but I can't remember it. See, I couldn't remember anything. And he said, could you ask God to let you mean it? What you're going to recite after me? And I said, God, let me mean this prayer I'm going to say after Walt. And it went like this, that I asked God to restore me to sanity on a lifetime basis and remove the obsession for me to drink on a lifetime basis, a day at a time. Walt had prayed it every day, all during the day, but I still couldn't remember it. And right after I did it, I went into the bathroom and I had a traumatic spiritual awakening. I heard God say to me that I could be sober and I could be sane on a lifetime basis, a day at a time. And I remembered that. But that wasn't the traumatic spiritual experience. The traumatic spiritual experience was that I believed it. I believed that I could be sober and I could be sane on a lifetime basis, a day at a time. And even more importantly, I believe it today, 31 and a half years or better later. And I believe that you can be sober and that you can be sane on a lifetime basis, a day at a time. We go have our coffee break now. We're going to take a collection first. We don't want you to get out. We will observe the 7th tradition and the steps according to our contribution. We will pass the basket. Please remain seated until the basket has been around the room. When we resume after the 7th tradition and 10-minute coffee break, I will welcome questions from you. And I would like to tell you I did not go much into my sobriety, but I have worked all 12 of the steps. And if there is anything, I have a good conscious contact with God. I have learned to be honest with me, and self-honesty was one of the hardest things I have to do. I have been able most of the time to keep a conscious contact with God. I take the 10th, 11th, and 12th step every day. I took a good 4th and 5th step. I have made all the amends I am aware of today. I have forgiven myself for everything I've ever done because my sponsor said it would be an insult to God not to accept his forgiveness. I have made every mistake you can make in Alcoholics Anonymous except drinking again. And for that I'm grateful. But I have learned from my mistakes. I got married and my motivation for marrying wasn't good and it didn't work, and then I wondered why it didn't work. And I'm just telling you some things that you can ask me about, and I hope that I'll have a question every second. Has the basket been everywhere? Does everybody feel they've given? No, we haven't had it here. We need the basket back here. We don't want to miss the money. Money is spiritual.
You gotta turn in the right direction.
Right, and stay sober. And the man made it sort of easy for me not to go to work, such as he kept me for a short period of time. And I couldn't tell anybody about it because there wasn't but one man in the group that could afford to keep me in the manner I had lived. And he was married. And I wasn't very comfortable in this. And I lost my conscious contact, which had been great. But I'm just into some weeks of being sober. And he got the minister's wife. He did everything so well to go find me a place to live, an apartment, and he explained that they didn't know what they were talking about, that a lady like me shouldn't have to work for a living. My family had been told not to send me any money, that if I was a parasite, I'd drink again. And they not to send me any money for a year. And nobody did in the family except Mother cheated a week ahead of time, Mary, and sent me money for a new dress to wear to my first day, birthday party. A week ahead of time, she cheated. But I lost my conscious contact with God, and I couldn't talk about it to my sponsors because to do so would injure them or others, and especially his wife, and he was a politician. It would injure his career and a few things like that. And I prayed, and I just didn't feel like that God heard me and that he was answering my prayers because I was still in the relationship. And I knew that I was going to drink because the book tells me that my conscious, that my a sure way that I will drink is if I lose my conscious contact, that my sobriety is contingent upon my conscious contact with God. I read all the spiritual books I could get. I read the book over and over to see how I could develop this conscious contact. But I'm reading my book at night. I'm reading the everything good I can find. I finally went to a minister, but I had to dodge it a little bit. I couldn't be open with him. And finally I just knew, and I was crying one night, and I just knew I was going to get drunk if I didn't do something. So what I had already done, I had told the man that I was very sorry for what I had done, that I would pay him back the money he had spent when I had got the money, but that still didn't relieve it. And I don't know whether I'd been asleep and awakened, or it was just when you're between sleep and being awakened. But I had remembered either the telling of, or else I actually recalled an incident that happened when I was a child. When I was a small child, I got away from my mother and daddy and went down the back steps at our house, which were 14 steps, and got in the path of the cows that were being driven in from the pasture to the barn lot. And that the lead cow was a ferocious, fractious Jersey cow who had a new calf in the lot. And if you know anything about animals, they want to get right with that calf. And Mother and Daddy couldn't reach me in time, nor could the men. They had been driving them on a path around the house to the barnyard lot. And I'm right in the path of the cow. And nobody could get to me in time. And they said I stood still. And I pointed my finger at the cow and said, "You better not bother me. I'm Jess Robinson's daughter." And then I looked the cow straight in the eye when I said it. And then I thought, oh God, how simple it is. How simple it is. If I will just think upon you as my Father. My Father who can do anything in the world and who would never let any harm befall me. If I can just love you like I love my Father, it would be a good beginning for me. And I started then. And I said, I realize that someday I'm going to have to say, as I said to the calf, I'm God's child. And as Chuck C. says, we all are God's children. And I added to it, and he doesn't have any stepchildren. Since that day, I have known that if I will pray and talk to God, and not do the kind of things that make me uncomfortable in talking to him. See, I hadn't talked to God about this before I got into this relationship. And I found now that anytime I can't talk to God about what I've done during the day, I know I'm in trouble. And I've asked God to forgive me. I couldn't talk about this in AA meetings in that part of the country because the people in that part of the country would be well aware of who it was that I'm talking about. And I kept this as deep, dark secret for a long, long time. And when I got out here, I was so glad none of you knew who was in the group with me and that I could talk about it. Another thing, I met his wife, and I liked her better than I did him. And I don't go for girls. So I have kept my conscious contact with God by talking over everything I do with him. And sometimes I don't listen to his answers, and when I don't, I get in trouble. But I know at the end of the day whether I have done something that I should not have done. And by examining my day, I know what I have to make amends for that day. And if it's not too late to telephone, I do so and make the amends. I work over at the North Hollywood group and manage the place, and I'm the corporate secretary and treasurer and secretary to the board over there. And I didn't feel well. I'd had pleurisy, and I didn't feel well. And I was a bitch for 2 days around there. And I realized I was. And so I got up and apologized to the whole group because I knew that everybody I came in contact with, I had been a bitch to. And, and I feel better when I make my apologies. And I tried not to be like that. But I make mistakes just like the rest of you, but I'm aware now and I catch it quicker. Does that answer your question? Just learn. I didn't understand God. He's too, and I still don't understand him because he's finite. I mean, he's infinite, and I have a finite mind. But I understand that God loves me. I understand that he loves me. And when one day I was talking at a meeting, and I meant to say God as I understand him, and I had a Freudian slip, and I said God as I love him. And that's the God I have, a good, loving God that loves you and me, and that he loves unconditionally. Unconditionally. And all he's waiting for is us to ask for forgiveness and accept it. And you see, it would be a direct insult to God if I don't accept his forgiveness. Thank you for asking that question. Who's next? Yes.
I'm Pat, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Pat. What's your name?
Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, thank you for your story. I wonder if you talk a little on the amends step, which I feel is extremely important in society, how you forgave yourself and how you made amends to these men you claimed you hurt and things.
Well, I certainly will. You can't make amends. She asked how I forgave myself and how I made amends. Well, the first amends that I made, my brother, I was in this place that I was telling you about 6 weeks. And by the end of the first month, the blind was leading the blind. I asked him, let's take women in there and keep one room for women. And that before I had to go to work, and I wasn't going to work, of course, when this man was in my life, I would be glad to do hospital duty and quote with the girls. Where did I get off on that? Making amends. All right. My brother brought me a stack of bills yay high. And he said, you better do something about these bills because they had been accumulating for several months, before and after. Well, I hadn't paid anybody anything in a long time. I don't know how long, doesn't matter. So my brother told me that I better write letters to all of my creditors and tell them I'd been ill and that I would pay them as soon as I was able to go to work a little bit, but I didn't want anything written off, that I was going to pay all of the bills. I didn't know that, but he said I was. I had planned just to let them slide. And because when I was out there drinking, you can cash bigger checks easier than you can small checks. And I gave bad checks for over $1,000. And but somebody always covered them. They always covered them. And I don't know, some of the people I don't know who covered my checks. I found out after he died that the chairman of the board at the bank covered my checks. But he was to tell my mother after I got sober that if there hadn't been such an age difference, he would like to have married me. I didn't know that. I would have written more bad checks when I was But anyhow, I don't write bad checks today. But my brother said to write and say I'd been ill and let them know that I had not forgotten I owed them. And there was no way that I saw myself clear to pay the checks. And I said, well, what am I going to say I've been ill with? And my brother said, why don't you try alcoholism? So I wrote all of my creditors that I had been suffering from a disease called alcoholism, that my estate was not settled, and I didn't, that I had drawn all the money from the estate that the courts would allow me to draw and beyond, and that as soon as I was able, I was going to work, and I would send token payments to them until I was able to pay them. I'd like to tell you the end of that before I go into the men part. I didn't lose my credit. I came right out to Westwood and opened a credit charge account with Bullocks in Westwood. Oh, it is Westwood, yeah. When I got back out here after I was 2.5 years sober, with us still, Mr. and Mrs. George M. Brown, still owing a very large bill. And I told her the credit manager the circumstances, and she said, well, she would do all she could for me, maybe in 2 weeks that she would have the credit ready. And I said, I can't wait 2 weeks. I'm getting married, and I've already tried on the Malapanas dress, and it needs alteration done on it. Got to do it today. And then I'm going to Las Vegas for a big reception that's being given there, and I've got the dress all picked out that's got to be altered. And I've got to have the hat, the gloves, the shoes, everything. Do you know that woman opened my charge account that day? And that's the way it's been with me everywhere I've been. I did not lose any credit. And then, of course, I explained that my estate had not yet been settled, and we'd paid that bill that George Brown sold. Now about the men. When I made a list of people that I had harmed, my sponsor said that was the ego trip I was on, that I couldn't have possibly been that important to that many men. And he told me that the book tells us to do so would injure them or others. We don't do it. So I didn't write any of the wives and ask them to forgive me. You see, my sponsor didn't think like I did. I said I wasn't a thief when I wrote my inventory. And he said, Alabam, when you go out with married men, that's stealing. And I said, Walter, I don't understand it. I didn't want anything except an escort. The places I went, you had to have escorts. You couldn't go to the nicer places without an escort. And I said, I just borrowed them. I wasn't playing for keeps. And Walt said, but you stole them away from your wives and their children, and that is thievery. they possibly spent money on you that their family should have had. And Walt didn't understand things, my sponsor. I explained to him I never asked a man to take me out that didn't have enough for all of us. You know, and actually, very often it was just an escort. There are only a few married men. I've committed adultery, and I don't like that about me, and I don't commit adultery in sobriety because I can't stay sober and do it. If I could, I'd be a cat woman, right? Well, but let's back up a little. About 15 years ago, one of the nicest men I've ever met in my life, he was so much like my first husband, had good-looking prestige property, wife and children. My husband was divorced from his wife, and before I met him. But anyhow, this man asked me to live in San Francisco. His wife lived in Southern Cal, and that I could travel anywhere with him in Europe or anywhere he went on business except in Southern California. And I had to tell him, I like this man. I like this man. I did not commit adultery with this man. It wouldn't be necessary for either one of us. When you feel those sparks just shaking hands, you know you got something there. And I had to, in sobriety, say thank you, but no thank you. And I regret saying no thank you. But I'm used to walking tall and looking everybody in the eye. And I can't live in devious manner any longer. But getting back to you making amends. Now, I got a Maine man now, but he's not married, and I'm not married, so somebody told me Maine man was a street talk. Well, I never drank on the street, and I didn't know it was street talk, but he likes being called my Maine man, and he likes giving me nice things. You know, like Alabam ultra suede suit this past weekend, and another beautiful wool suit, and he just likes to give me things, and I like getting them. And he's 28 years sober, and I'm 31 and a half, and I've known him all those years because my husband that was killed in an accident, I took the message to him. We toted it to him, as they say down south. And his wife was my first cousin, and she's been dead about 8 years. And we've been dating, I guess, 6, 7 years. And he asked me to marry him, but you know, I'm too young to get married. And I don't like New York as well as I like California, so we just have a long-distance relationship, meeting whenever we can. All right, getting back to the making amends. The people that I had harmed most were the people that loved me most, and that was my family. It nearly killed them to see me dying there. And what happened was that my brother read the book before I did. And I went and said, Dan, I've got amends to make to you and Ben especially, and Mother and Daddy, because they had covered the checks. They had flown out here to get me in hospitals and to doctors and so forth. They'd find me in New York and bring me home and put me in a hospital. You know, all of these kind of things. And I said, I can pay the money back when my estate's settled. But I don't know how I could ever pay you for the times you were away from your wife and children, your wives and children, and from your business. I have no idea how much business you lost because you weren't there. They both owned their own businesses. And my brother said, we have already talked over the amends step. We've already talked it over, and we knew in time you would come to us. He said the only amends that anybody in this family wants from you is for you to be sober, because that's the only way you are happy. And he says if you will be happy and sober, your amends are made. And I said all but the financial, and that'll be taken care of. And I did. There's no way of paying people for that time. There's no way of paying. I couldn't have done that. But I did pay all the monies I owed back. My sponsor still said that I had too many people on my list that I had harmed because I wasn't that important to them. And my father died before I really could make good amends to him. And I was told that I could be nice to somebody else's father, and that God and my father understood the amends had been made there because Daddy saw me sober before he died. And my mother lived 25 years after I got sober. And I was able to go see her at least once a year and sometimes twice a year and have her out to California to visit me on occasions. And I wrote her often and I called her often. And I found out something, that I loved my mother and would have loved her and liked to have had her a friend even though she had not been my mother. And I'm so grateful for that. My husband George was dead. We both had amends to make to each other, and I'm taking his inventory, but he became a chronic gambler. And the chairman of the board told me that if I had nothing but the stock that we had in that company, I was fixed for life comfortably. And I found that George had borrowed, it was blue chip stock, had borrowed up to 95% on it from friends and 75% on it up in the banks. So it left me a little bit short. And in many ways it possibly saved my life, because if I had had the money, I might have started traveling. I love to travel. And if I had been traveling instead of sticking with a group that knew and loved me and knew what I was like, and that cared enough to tell me the truth, I might not be standing here today or anywhere. I might be dead. I can travel today. I can go anywhere I want to now without drinking. Another question, please. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Doug, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug. I'd like to know, since I've heard over the last few years about the ism of the disease, number one, what is the alcohol ism, and how do I know when the ism is at work inside of me?
All right. If you're an alcoholic, it'll be in work with the inside of you the rest of your life. You see, I haven't had a problem with drinking in 31 and a half years and more. So alcohol is not my problem. I am the problem. Me and my stinking thinking. Me and my immaturity, emotional immaturity. I don't have a particular problem with the mental immaturity, but I do the emotional immaturity. Witness the fact that when people go out, the ism is the disease. We still have the disease, which is dis-ease. You can look at it that way, dis-ease. We will have that until the day we die. And we don't have to do anything about not drinking, except just keep the cap on the bottle. But what we have to do, we have to, through these 12 steps, learn to live in such a manner that we are comfortable with ourselves. Alcoholism is only arrested, and it's contingent on whether we take a drink or not, whether we go back into further trouble. But I've had to try to grow up. I'm 71 years of age, and I've had to try to grow up as a result of working these 12 steps. I have tried to be, self-honesty is a problem I had, real problem. Let me see how my time's going. Can you tell me 2 more minutes? I've had to grow up. Your disease is arrested only, and it's contingent on you not taking that first drink, or you will go back into an unarrested state. The ism is the whole makeup, the personality, the thinking, and we still have the same allergy to it. You know, it is an allergy of the body coupled with an obsession of the mind, and my obsession runs like this. Someday, somehow, I'll be able to drink like a lady again. Well, I don't think that way anymore. Someday, somehow, I will never be able to drink successfully. Therefore, I must find a way to live that I am comfortable without drinking. Witness the fact that when people have gone out over 30 years sober, and God forbid that I do or anybody does, all I got to do is not take that first drink, you understand. I can become mentally drunk from poor thinking, but I don't have to become a wet drunk. And that is what we are working on, the mental and the emotional. We don't have to do a thing about the wet part of it, because we're not drinking. But you will never be cured from alcoholism, which is the disease we suffer from. but it is arrested as long as we do what we have to do to stay sober. I'm going to tell you, and may go a minute longer, about self-honesty. It was awfully hard for me to be honest with self. I thought frankness was honesty, and sometimes I was frank to the point of being rude. And I have found that frankness and honesty, self-honesty, has nothing in common. After I got sober, my sponsors made me go to work. And my brother got me a job with the state, and my sponsors said I couldn't take it, and I said, why? They said because they were taxpayers and they didn't want the money wasted. And so they got me a job clicking in the store for 76 cents an hour. And I bitched about it, and they told me I should pay them to teach me how to work. And that I'd have to stay there 2 years for a recommendation to be any good, because I'd never done anything but work for family, be company hostess for this big mining company. And I was doing real well, and I'd been promoted after I'd been on the job 5 months, the manager and buyer for my department. And so I started wearing a halo. I'd, given up the married man. I had written my letters of amends and all of these things. And I was being asked to speak a little bit and so forth. And I went down to this same clubhouse I got sober in, and I walked in wearing a halo that night, because I had been commended for the work I'd done, and was with this big chain of stores, and I was going to be given some kind of an award, and I was wearing a halo. And I said to the boys that sat there and waited to me, and the whole idea, they sort of took an inventory of my day for me and told me what I'd done wrong and hadn't done right and so forth. And I said, boys, you're going to have to excuse me tonight. I got to go first up to see the poor lady that came in at noon when I was here. And I came down, and this halo was blinding me. Halos on alcoholics are not becoming. They tarnish readily. And I think that's from the toxic poisoning that left in our And they also have a way of blinding us. And I came down just in that condition, and I looked at these men that knew me and known me ever since I came in. They sat around every night, and then they asked me if I had eaten properly that day and so forth and so on. And if so, if I didn't have the money, they'll say, who's popping to take Alabama out for a steak? She's got to have her proteins. And that was when I didn't have anything to speak of, and money-wise. And I said, came down this step with that halo blinding me, and I said, oh, man, I'm so grateful I didn't go to the lengths the poor girl upstairs went to, holier than thou. And Dick Awano, 6th grade education, looked me straight in the eye and pointed his finger at me and said, Alabam, what you done, she ain't done. And I said, Dick, she told every one of us when I was down here at noon today as she came in that she was a prostitute. I had to whisper it, couldn't say the word out loud. And Dick looked at me in utter disgust. And he says, Alabam, ain't you gonna ever get honest with yourself? Kate, we teach you the meaning of self-honesty. And I said, Dick, I don't even know what you're talking about. And Dick said, I believe you. He said, don't you know the only difference in you and that gal upstairs is you didn't know you could sell it, and besides you didn't need the money. So that's the way I've gotten honest with myself. And if I don't remain honest with myself and open-minded and willing to do what is in our book, in chapter 5, how it works, I won't stay sober. And the ism will give me trouble like drinking. And to drink for me is to die or go insane. I don't want to be a vegetable. And it would be just my luck that I'd be a vegetable instead of dying. Instead, I want to be an attraction. I want people to know by having heard my story that if I can stay sober, anybody can stay sober if they will have 3 requirements: an honest desire, and I didn't have an honest one when I got here, but it became an honest one. And if they'll keep their mind open and the willingness to do what's in our 12 steps to recovery. I thank you, I love you, and I'm happy I was here.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.